Recently, my phone broke. And what I mean by my phone broke is that my camera broke. And what I mean by my camera broke is that the selfie function on my camera broke. And y'all know that that's traumatizing. It's traumatizing when you cannot control and angle and kind of curate exactly how you want people to see you. Because we live in a world where that's what we do. We spend most of our time making sure that people can see us exactly how we want to be seen. And the reason is because we know that how others see us deeply impacts how we see ourselves. Today in Luke chapter 19, we're going to look at the story of Zacchaeus, and we're going to see how being seen actually transforms him and reconciles him. And so we're going to look at Zacchaeus chapter 19. We find Zacchaeus here in this chapter. It says that Zacchaeus is a tax collector. And so we know that he is unclean. We know that the way others see him is as unclean and someone who breaks religious laws, and someone who is not only unclean, but someone who literally is a tool of the empire to exploit other people. So this is someone who is making their living and their money on the backs of his very own people and by harming his very own people. And Jesus sees Zacchaeus, or finds Zacchaeus in this mess that he's in. Zacchaeus was a tax collector who ran the whole system in Jericho. So not only was he a tax collector, he was the chief. He was like the worst who set up the system. And so here is Zacchaeus. He has climbed up this tree. He has pulled up his tunic, his dress. And we know that people didn't wear pants. There's no pants. So this guy was wearing a dress. He's climbing up a tree, got nothing else on. And he's just like desperate. We know he's desperate. He's trying to see Jesus. He doesn't care how people see him at this point. He doesn't care. It's like, what else do I got to lose? There has to be something. And he's looking for Jesus, and he's looking out. And you just know that what's going on for Zacchaeus right now is that he knows that his life has to stand for something else. He knows that there has to be more than what he's living, because he's got the job, and he's got the wealth, and he's got every possession that he would want. But what he really wants is to be reconciled, to have relationship. He wants to have relationship with the people around him in society. He wants to have relationship with Jesus himself. And so he's looking, he's up in this tree, and he's trying to see where Jesus is coming, because he wants his life to make a difference. And I think a lot of us are kind of in that space where we know there's something else. We know that it's not just about getting the right job or making the right amount of money or having the best kind of toys. It's about living a life that matters. It's about finding a different way to live, a better way to live, a lifestyle that's meaningful, a life that has impact. And so here you find a man who has done well for himself, and he's wealthy, and he's not in the crowd with everyone else, but he's up in a tree, and he's hiding, and he's looking, and he's leaning, and he's searching for Jesus. And the beautiful part about this image that we have here of Zacchaeus is that before Zacchaeus can even see Jesus, before Zacchaeus can even spot him, Jesus sees Zacchaeus. Jesus sees Zacchaeus, and he says, "Zacchaeus, come down." And you have to wonder if Zacchaeus is thinking to himself, yeah, so Jesus, I was hiding up in this tree. Like, I wasn't really trying to be at the front of the line or kind of at the center of attention. And, feeling a bit exposed right now, feeling a little bit embarrassed or shame right now. And at the same time, Jesus probably made him feel very relieved, because he was seen by Jesus. And Zacchaeus probably had this experience like many of us do, where, we're not seen for who we are. We're not seen for all of who we are. We're seen for what we bring. We're seen for where we come from. And so I know I have this experience in my own life, but also in the community that I live in, where I tell people like, oh yeah, this is where I live, this is what I'm doing. And people are like, oh, okay, so you're raising your family there? And I'm like, yes, I'm raising my family there. It's awesome. And here, try to tell them how beautiful it is and what's great. Oh, so isn't it like, oh wow, the West Side, that's like, isn't it dangerous? And people can only see what they want to see. And that's why people think, oh, well, what good can come out of there? Like, what beauty can come out of there? What gifts or treasure can come out of there? And we have people in our community that feel the same way. Maybe we even have people in our families that feel the same way, that we can only be seen by the mistakes that we've made, or the location that we come from, or how we live in our bodies in this world, because of our status, because of our racial group, because of our class. I know that happens all the time in the church. We have friends and neighbors who are formerly incarcerated, and they experience that all the time when they go apply for a job, when they come into a church, when they're meeting neighbors. And no one wants to be seen just for one aspect of their life. No one wants to be seen because of a mistake that they've made in their life or a decision that they've chosen. I know I don't want to be the total sum of my worst decisions. And so Zacchaeus has this opportunity to be reconciled to Jesus as Jesus calls him down, says, come down here, I'm coming to your house. So in that invitation, Jesus not only reconciles Zacchaeus to himself, Zacchaeus is also reconciled to his community, or begins kind of his entrance back into social society, because here is this religious leader that everyone's coming to see, and this religious leader that everyone is there for, the whole crowd is there for, turns to this one man, Zacchaeus, who no one can stand, who everyone thinks is a traitor, and says to him, come down, because I'm coming to your house tonight. I'm going to eat at your table with your people. I'm going to be present with you and proximity with you. And that was so meaningful socially. So we know that Jesus was not only reconciling Zacchaeus to himself, Jesus was reconciling Zacchaeus to his community, and Jesus was reconciling Zacchaeus to himself, because Zacchaeus' name means clean and pure. So Jesus was reorienting and returning and restoring back to Zacchaeus who his parents intended him to be. And I think a lot of us need that. Not to only know that we're loved by God, that God sees us, but that in seeing us, God restores and acknowledges and affirms our dignity, our humanity, our worth, regardless of what anybody around you has told you, regardless of the decisions that you've made, and even in the light of the decisions you've made and the things that have been done to you. Because we never want to take away from people seeing their full humanity in their social location. I would never want to strip away and ignore the reality that some of my best friends that I do life with here have gone through incredible suffering and tragedy, have crossed countries on foot with children, have endured abuse. And that has deeply shaped how they see themselves and how they see the world. And I would never want to say, let's just ignore all of that about you. Let's ignore that you don't have status. Let's ignore that you're Black. Let's ignore that you come from among family. Let's ignore. No, we want to say, I see you fully in who you are. And all of those things have deeply shaped who you are in really profound ways. And so being seen by Jesus and being seen by others, being seen by God, brings us to a place of being reconciled to ourselves, of understanding who we are and who we can be, what our life is about and what it can be. And then lastly, Zacchaeus responds to God. He responds to Jesus by saying, I will give it all. I'll give it all. I'll give half of my possessions. I'll give to the poor. And if I've exploited anyone, I'll give them what they're owed and more. I'll make restitution. I'll make reparations. I will live a life of justice. I will live a life of peace. I will live a life of generosity. And so our confrontation with Jesus, our being seen by God, our being known and reconciled not only to God, but to ourselves and to one another in community, it invites this kind of response of repentance. It invites this radical inclusion and generosity in our lives to say, everything I am, I give to you. Everything I have, I give to you. Because you saw me, because you sought me, because you've given me the courage to see with my own eyes the people around me, their beauty, their humanity, their dignity, their pain, and their suffering. And now I get to live in response to that. I get to rebuild a just world. I get to be the fragrance of Christ. We, our communities, our churches, our friend groups, we get to be as communities the fragrance of Christ wherever we are. There's a better way to live. There's a way to live in the world in response to Jesus that isn't about you, that doesn't center you, because we've experienced that healing. We've experienced that transformation. We've experienced that reconciliation in a way that allows us to then go and be reconciled to others, to then go and search our hearts around why we other people, or why we have certain responses to the news, or why we don't care or advocate for or put ourselves on the line for our friends, and why we love to have the kind of inclusion that's like, oh yes, we want diverse spaces. I have an Asian friend. Black Lives Matter. But we don't actually live in a way that advocates for systems and structures and a society that really takes the lives of vulnerable people and protects them. So we can worship in our churches, and we can read our books, and we can even talk about justice and do absolutely nothing about our children that are suffering along our borders or in our inner cities, or even entrapped in our suburban homes. But God gives us the courage when we know that God sees us, when we know that God sought us and reconciled us to one another, to ourselves, to Jesus. We know that then we have the courage to live a life of radical reconciliation and radical inclusion and radical generosity and radical love, because the only way we can live is in a way where our life will make a difference in our campuses, in our schools, in our cities, with our neighbors, in relationship to our family. We live a life in which we seek to see others the way that Jesus saw us. And we seek to be reconciled to others in the way that we're reconciled to Jesus. And we seek then to respond with love and justice. May that be our prayer, that we would be people that say to Jesus, half of what I have. And if ever I have harmed anyone, I will pay them more. May we be people that say to Jesus, my vocation, my relationships, my dreams, I give them to you because I trust that you see me and you love me, and you've given me eyes to see the world that you love and to be a part of living justly in it. Amen.